Okay, we should be live right now on YouTube, Rumble, Locals, and X. I'm trying X again to see how that goes and muting my other tab in the background. I don't like hearing myself. So far, we'll see who comes up, but we have with us the illustrious Steve from Southern Law. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Well, I know we both got an Army background, so if you're not early, you're late. So we're always in this thing early, but we had some unexpected things, I think. So we'll have some real talent arriving soon. But we've got some stories we could talk about as they make their way to the stage.
Definitely. Well, and I'm going to open up with one thing and say happy birthday to me, sort of. This channel is officially 2 years old, but it wasn't always this channel. There's a bit of a story to it. This channel that everybody's watching right now was America's Untold Stories as of this date, September 29th, 2021. Within 3 weeks of the channel being up, we got hit by BS copyright claims from a documentary filmmaker that got the channel nuked. I was pissed off about it, and I figured, oh, well, the channel's only 3 weeks old, started it up again, and that is the current America's Untold Stories. And then I prevailed in the copyright counterclaims, and this channel was restored from backup. So I had an extra channel, and I wasn't sure what to do. And thus this became Laid Back News. And my thought of this channel, if anybody's curious, was I had a lot of lawyers on my channel, Eric Hunley, and I thought, let me shift off everything topical to Laid Back News. And I was trying to do a weekly news show. And then Eric Hunley will be evergreen. America's Untold Stories is its own thing. And then this channel, the whole idea of it is current events. And I thought the legal panels were kind of talking about current events and more. So here we are. And hopefully, if you guys like it, you'll remember to subscribe, because I definitely would like to have more. So, okay, let's start off with what I think is a frustrating story, but hopefully Steve can fill me in. Marilyn Manson settles again. Now, maybe I'm reading it wrong, and I'm not the guy. I'm not the one who's put under the scrutiny all the time, but it's a little bit frustrating that he's just settling with everybody. Esme Bianco, et cetera. It's like he has some very legitimate claims that people have definitely lied about him. He's proven it out, but yet he's just settling. Now, you're the lawyer. You're going to talk me down. You're going to say, Eric, you're nuts. He should settle. He should just get rid of him, and he should move on with his life, right?
Yes, I will jump off the fence onto the Manson side of the field here and tell you why. If I were a Manson supporter, I would not see this as a bad result. I'd see it as a positive result. And I think one of the things is the Depp v. Heard case set an outlier out there that people expect that, hey, if your guy or girl or whatever is aggrieved, that you go to court and you'll have this big day in court that costs millions and millions of dollars and you'll be vindicated in the public sphere. But that's such a rare thing. And Manson's attorney team has said from the beginning the very practical advice that they have generally, which is their success is not getting to a courtroom and exposing yourself to a risk to a jury. Their success is getting their clients' problems handled so their client can go on and do what they do best in life. And Manson's situation is very complicated, of course, because he's lost a lot of things because of the allegations. And then he was sued by several people, of course, as everybody knows. But I think it's, if you look at these things on balance, okay, so Smithline, her case craters, and she abandons it and dismisses it and says, I was pressured into filing this suit. That's a goal for Manson, right? Right at the same time, Bianco settles her case in federal court, and everybody's going to assume that she's the one who came down because Manson didn't want to pay anything, so she wanted a lot of money. Some behind the scenes thing happened, and she settles the case, so Manson doesn't have to answer for anything. And then in Jane Doe, what's interesting to me here is that Manson said, okay, I'll waive the Fifth Amendment, right? So if you're a Manson hater he is going to go to trial and have to testify under oath about this groupie video and all the things he allegedly did. You got him where you want him, right? The DA is taking forever, but now you got him. And instead the plaintiff goes, now let's settle the case. And King, who is Manson's lawyer, says we paid pennies on what her original demand was, and that's probably true. So how's that not good for Manson that he put himself out and said, I'm willing to testify under oath in everything you're accusing me of. And then the other side says, that's okay, we'll just take a little settlement and move on with life. To me, that is King handling these suits against Manson, because all he's got left that I know of is the suit in New York, in which the plaintiff has become public and is also agreeing to some of Manson's arguments to dismiss some of the claims. That case is sitting there waiting for that to be heard. Ashley Walters in California will eventually come back from the Court of Appeals with a much smaller case. Who knows what will happen to that? And then the other case is Manson's case against Wood and Gore, right? Mm-hmm. And he hasn't succeeded in that case, but he's also on the offensive in that case. He's not really in a position to lose in that case. He's not going to lose money in it. So I think they've tilted the balance of the litigation in his favor, generally speaking. And if you're his litigation team, that's what you can do for him. So that's my view of it. If I were his team, I'd be pretty happy that that the plaintiff backed off after he offered to testify, because that makes him look better, in my opinion. Okay,
well, you talked me down. I feel better now. I want to bring in, because we've got Viva on the beach and Viva coming from the breach, and I would love to hear from him about what has been dubbed the vice presidential debate.
First-hand account. I want to hear it too. Everybody wants to hear this.
So I don't know how bad the audio is. Can you hear me good enough?
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay, because I don't have the my phone doesn't recognize the earbud. The vice presidential debate. This was the second RNC debate up in this was in the Reagan Library in California. I mean, the term shit show has been thrown around on the internet and Twitter, and by all accounts, it was the most ridiculous debacle of a gong show you've ever seen. I mean, I posted one clip, and I didn't want to post too many because I don't know if Fox News is going to claim ownership. It was a joke. They were sitting there like robots talking over each other, but it was so weird to see in real person, in real time in person, because it wasn't clear who they were even talking to. They weren't listening to each other. They weren't talking to the audience. They weren't really talking to the moderator, and it's like they were all doing their like miming routine, not understanding that nobody could hear a damn word anybody said. But it was a debacle of a debate. I mean, nothing good came out of it. Vivek, I think, if I can give my own personal assessments, I like Vivek. I think he didn't come off as well during this one because he was getting attacked on all fronts and came off a little defensive. Nikki Haley coming off with the zingers. I mean, I don't think she came off looking particularly good. Chris Christie was the only one who came off mildly decently, because at least he stopped talking when his time was up and didn't try to filibuster. Although he had an amazing zinger of a joke. If Donald Trump keeps ducking out of the debates, they're not going to call him Donald Trump. They call him Donald Duck. And you could have heard a mouse fart in the room. It was so bad and so ridiculous. But it was cool. I got to go with my aunt. She was my +1. So I got my 86-year-old aunt as my date to the event, and it was a lot of fun. It was cool.
Now, did you get to meet anyone? Any of the politicians?
Not any of the ones that were debating. They were on stage for a few seconds afterwards, but people were running up like teeny boppers trying to get selfies with them. Vivek was the one who was most mingling with the crowd afterwards, but I didn't try to elbow in and get a picture. But no, so they weren't really mingling before or after. The debate, I don't know if anybody watched it. It came to such an abrupt end. People in the audience were like, is that it? Is it over? Like after the idiotic last question of voting someone off the island, they're like, this debate is over. And then they were out of there. And people were running out because it was unstimulating as a debate. I made the joke that Donald Trump destroys the field, hardy har. You can understand why. I don't agree with the idea of not debating. I think he's got better excuses and better justification for not going to these debates and getting threatened of intimidating Mike Pence. Mm-hmm. But he would have had nothing to gain by being in that shit show.
What about the person who I think belonged on that stage, and I feel like the RNC is trying to keep out, Larry Elder? Did you?
1,000%. So Larry Elder gave a good interview with Dave Rubin after the debate. There's no question it's like to some extent, so that's a big truck. To some extent, the RNC, you know, it's not that they're. You go to these events and you realize that there's a reason why they don't like Trump, the RNC, or like, you know, the rhinos.
Mhm.
They don't want an outsider, you know, legit candidate like Larry Elder any more than the DNC wants JFK in there. They just go about it differently in terms of excluding those who I think they perceive as probably intriguing candidates that might upset the, that might give some competition to those who are already there. Larry Elder would have been a good voice to have there because I think he'd make a lot more sense than Mike Pence, war whore, Nikki Haley, war whore. Who was the other one that was their answer to Ukraine? It's in the national best interest of America to continue fighting the proxy war against Russia. They're all a bunch of war whores. It's astonishing to see in real time. The only one who's different is Vivek and Trump.
Yeah, true. And I don't know. I always enjoy hearing Larry Elder too. I feel like I feel like he's deliberately being excluded, and it's very weird because you know they're always going on and on how the Republicans have a race problem, and it's like, dudes, you potentially have two black candidates there with Tim Scott, who apparently couldn't be calm. I guess last time he was a milquetoast, and then this time, from what I understand, they had to cut his mic.
Oh, which one?
Tim Scott.
Tim Scott, he wasn't even talking all that much, but there's no format, there's no order, nobody knows when they're going to speak. So Tim Scott was rightly being ignored on a number of questions, but then again, he was going overtime on others. And when he had the mic, didn't deliver any knockout, you know, like beautiful points. It was just verbal political diarrhea coming out of all of their mouths. Even Vivek, to some extent, when he had the mic, it degraded into what are they called, like platitudes, political platitudes. I don't even know who said anything mildly meaningful. DeSantis had a good answer on the pro-life question, and then he fence sat on his Ukraine question. So, but DeSantis, you know, came out looking, you know, more of the same, neither better nor worse. Vivek was taking a bit of a hit, and Chris Christie, well, oh God, and yeah, who was the other one there? So you had and Mike Pence. Mike Pence exudes arrogant pomposity whenever he speaks. It's astonishing to watch.
Yeah, it is. Grandpa Mike. And then, well, yeah, Doug Bergrum, I guess he was irrelevant.
And even when he spoke, like, it's good. We understand he's a successful businessman. He's doing well in North Dakota. But it's just like every question comes back to my successes, and they're generally like patting themselves on the back. Chris Christie talking about how he got elected in a blue state might not be the success, the win that he thinks it is. So yeah, Bergum's good. Bergum makes a lot of sense, but they were all just trying to get their talking points in, and it's just the format is just a ridiculous format. I don't know, 7 people up there, 1 minute each, 30 seconds for rebuttal, 15 seconds. Nothing can be answered of substance in a minute.
True. Okay, so how was the overall experience then, other than the debate, which was the worst part?
It was great. I met Luke Rudkowski. We did a tour around together. He gave me all the lowdown on Bohemian Grove and the government. What do they call it? What are those symbols called? The like stonemasons things. What are they called?
Oh, I know they had the owls, but I can't remember.
Oh, he was pointing out all of the stonemason
edifices.
Imagery.
Wait.
Yeah, there's a word for that type of stuff, occult stuff. But he was pointing it out. I did a good loop with him. Barnes was there. Barnes, he's got a good interview with Ruben. Met Ruben, hung out with Pavlovsky, hung out with the whole Rumble team. It was amazing. The food after the event was delicious. And the event itself was amazing. I had never been to the Reagan Library, so you go up this mountain. The Reagan Library, it's a museum. The actual Air Force One is in there. We didn't get to do it, but you could walk upstairs, go through the actual airplane, Air Force One. The actual helicopter's there. It's a massive, massive glass window that looks over the Simi Valley. It was amazing. But Eric, do we have time to talk about Nazigate?
Oh, of course. Your friend, Mr. Trudeau, apparently, hold on, I just saw a headline earlier, you could confirm it, that Poland is trying to extradite the guy that your government was saluting.
Yeah, so I don't think they're trying to extradite him. I think it got a little exaggerated. Apparently their minister of education or something said that, had talked about it, but apparently they had looked into this guy earlier, and they don't extradite just because you were a member of the Galicia, whatever. They extradite if they have evidence of individual war crimes, which from what I understand, 80 years or whatever, it was 60 years later when they were looking into it, they didn't find any. So the guy's not I mean, not accused of specific demonstrable war crimes.
Well,
but he fought for the SS Galicia 14th Grenadier Division in Ukraine, and they were apparently, worse Nazis than the Nazis.
Go ahead, John.
well, no, yeah, I was going to say, just when people understand, when you see in World War II the Germans doing anti-partisan operations, that means they're burning villages and killing everybody they find in them. So
the history of this particular division out of Ukraine was notorious. And like, the fact that politicians don't understand, if they were fighting the Soviets, Russia may be our enemy today, but they weren't back then. So who was fighting the Soviets? The Nazis. And in this particular, Ukrainian division, they were, vicious is not the word, inhumane is not the word. They committed atrocities, not just against Jews, against the Poles, which is why it's an embarrassment to Poland and an outrage to Poland that these, some of these Ukrainian forces, saw the Nazis as the excuse to exact their revenge against their Polish neighbors. So it's all a wicked, outrageous scandal. The House of Commons Speaker resigned as though he's the sole person to blame. Nazigate, and it should take down Justin Trudeau.
Oh, really? I mean, if blackface hasn't done it, if all of his other scandals haven't done it, are you just wishing anymore, dude?
I'm wishing it, but blackface was 20 years ago. He gave a speech. Was it today? I think it was today or yesterday. His apology. I mean, you got to get the behavior panel on it. These are the sounds of Florida, by the way.
Hey.
Oh no, it wasn't. It was just a speeding thing. It was. Here, let's see what's going on there. There it is. You got to get the behavior panel on it because it's such pathological narcissism. The apology is, I'm sorry for what wrote. He didn't even say I'm sorry. It was wrote to this. It was the House Speaker's fault. We all are embarrassed. It happened. And I would like to apologize on behalf of the Poles, the Jews, the Romas, the 2S LGBTQI. And then he goes on to say, well, we can't let Russia use this as propaganda. I mean, it's pathological, narcissistic gaslighting of the highest order. But this is modern. This is international. So I'm going to push and keep screaming until it takes.
When's your next election, though?
It's scheduled for 2025 unless there's a vote of no confidence, which I don't know how there isn't. I mean, nobody has confidence in this government except for Jagmeet Singh of the the opposition, the minority. And I think he's got faith. He's got confidence in the government because he needs to get to 2025 so he can get his government pension after serving his 6 years or 8 years or whatever. Ugh. It's atrocious.
Well, then I got to give
Trudeau
credit
with the assassination issue in Canada.
Say that again.
He's got his own problems with that Indian guy getting assassinated up in Canada.
He's always had his own problems. He's been a Khalistani supporter for a long time. He got denied a visa to India. We don't really know the reasons, but we can extrapolate. He's got his problems, but man, dude needs I don't know. He needs his pension. So after a certain amount of years in federal office, you get it. And some people are hypothesizing that the 2025 elections come naturally after he will have acquired his pension.
So now Trudeau essentially pulled a smart move when he called the election in 2021. That extended his term to four more years, or am I misinterpreting?
No. The smart move is he called the election because he thought he could score some seats during the pandemic. I don't know what the strategic decision was to call the election in 2021, but they eked out a minority government. But they're going to remain in power so long as they have the coalition support of the NDP, which they do. It's a coalition government, so they can prop them up until the next required election, as opposed to declaring no confidence and triggering an election now. Joe, what's up?
Yo, how are you? You look so healthy.
Dude, I feel disgusting and ugly. Like I feel like first of all, my forehead is more tan than my lower part. I feel gross, ugly. Now I'm sweating like a pig. But it'll grow back.
You have that healthy Florida man tan.
Sunlight is a good disinfectant, and it's also just a good rejuvenant. Yeah. Joe, have you recovered from that Russell Brand Twitter space?
Oh my gosh! It's actually gotten worse. I was in Twitter space yesterday, which I was like, wow, I think I have to scream Sig Heil to hang around here. I had Nick Fuentes in there.
No. Oh, God.
I didn't realize it when I went in. But Nick Fuentes and that's like Andrew Torba. Which,
Shut
oh
up.
my
Well,
god!
hold on.
Wow.
Joe,
Wow.
I mean, what Twitter space were you in with Torba and Fuentes? Oh, you guys coming in?
So I
He was
mean,
in a
I was
different environment,
specifically invited in there. I actually, when I went in there, I ended up not saying a word the entire time I was in there. Like literally, my stomach was just turning. I'm not gonna kid you, my stomach was just turning. I went in, but I was listening to all about the Jews and how they, how we were apparently just this massive blight on society, and it's an interesting thing. The topic, the explosive topic yesterday was because Elon Musk hosted a Twitter space with Ben Shapiro and a whole bunch of rabbis, and people felt that he was. I haven't listened to this space. It was about anti-Semitism and whatever. And I had not yet even listened to this space, so I didn't. And there was all these people who are angry that they feel that Elon was too apologetic to the Jews and the Jews have too much power and whatever. And I'm sitting here and I'm constantly saying, like, look, I think anti-Semitism is one of the most overblown things in the world. I think it's been weaponized by people who don't really care about Jews as an opportunity to censor and cancel people. And the thought is that it's Jews who are behind it. It's Jewish power that's behind that. I don't even think it's Jewish power that's behind this whole clamping down. I don't even know what the heck Jewish power is. I mean, what the hell was that? What the hell does that even mean? It's like this. Is there a hangout for like all the Jews who have money? Have you been welcomed in yet, Viva, to the Jewish hangout?
Well, Joe, I mean,
thing.
the argument is that there is statistical overrepresentation in certain positions of power and political influence that are held by Jewish people. And you can't blame people for coming to that observation because, like, I always go to the impeachment, which they called it the Jew coup. Some people called it the Jew coup, but you can't ignore the fact that a great many players on the side of the impeachment, Feinstein, Schiff, what's the other guy there, Nadler, Vindman, who I never even knew was Jewish until I looked at. You can't deny that. The flip side is, like Barnes explains, I mean, they're not, whatever they're doing, they may be Jewish, but they're not doing it in the name of Judaism.
Yeah.
And the flip side is on the other side of the Trump defense, you got a bunch of Jews as well. So there's statistical overrepresentation on both sides, and it'll allow people on both sides to come to whatever conclusions they want to as to the nature and reason for this statistical overrepresentation.
Yeah, and look, I have a lot of thoughts on the impeachment hearings. I have a lot of thoughts about that, which I'm sure we'll get to. But yeah, just on this topic, I'm like, look, I hate the ADL. I think that they're evil, and I coined the term Jonathan Goebbels because I think that he creates more anti-Semitism than anybody. He's terrible. He's terrible. He's just he like people like hate Jews so much more than if he had never existed. He's terrible. He's a terrible human being. I hate him. But
the irony is he perpetuates a lot of, through his actions, perpetuates a lot of the stereotypes that they describe on their own website.
That's exactly why I say that he just like Goebbels would perpetuate and create anti-Semitism, so does Jonathan Greenblatt. That's why I gave him that. I chose that name specifically. I didn't call him, Goring. I didn't call him Jonathan Goring. I call him his Goebbels. That's what he is. He's terrible. Oh my God. So I recognize that, and I recognize it's been used as a cudgel to wrongfully censor people or harm people or whatever, and strip them of their livelihood. But when I was listening to this space yesterday, I was like, because that has become so overt and terrible, there are some people out there who generally just don't like Jews, and I don't care if you don't like Jews. There are always going to be people who don't like Jews. I don't care. That's fine. You're free to feel that way. But they're basically it's having the reaction of having people really believe that there's some sort of Jewish cabal which is controlling everything, rather than just a cabal of evil people, many of whom happen to be Jewish, like you were pointing out. It's got nothing to do with their Judaism. They're just rich people who are looking to be rich, and a whole bunch of them happen to be Jews, and a whole bunch of them are not Jewish. But because there's overrepresentation, but I had a long conversation with this guy who says he's Jewish and was so angry about Elon Musk meeting with Elon Musk, and he's convinced that there's some sort of Jewish manipulation or something like that, and I'm like, dude. And this is the point. The point I was making to him was like, think about this for a second. Do you think that there's white privilege? And he's like, no. So I said, well, the lack of success for the black community, what would you attribute that to? So he's like, well, they don't have good family structure, and they don't have whatever, and all this other stuff, all the things that are true. So I said, and the success of the Asians, why are they so successful? So he's like, well, they have a better family culture, and they work hard, whatever, and they're smart and they work hard, whatever. So I said, so why is it you would say that for Asians, but you don't say that for Jews? Like, why is it that the same way that these ingredients that we know lead to success or failure, why is it that when it comes to Jews, you're looking at your own people and saying that there must be some sort of cabal or whatever? And, it just doesn't make any sense. But I think he started understanding where I was coming from. Like this is like, but he really believes it. And I think that they're now more confident in coming out, expressing that hatred, because it's not being done as it's Jew hatred, but it's being done as, well, there's
anti-Zionism is the code.
Well, that's what they've been using for decades, the anti-Zionism. But now it's being used as like, no, we're being censored. We're fighting against censorship, and it's the Jews trying to censor us. That's what now has become like,
shut it down when it was real.
But that's a strategy, and a disingenuous one. I mean, to be honest, there's a routine where somebody will say a bunch of nasty stuff like that, and then they get blocked, and they're like, "See, I told you, they control the world."
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
That was sort of Kanye West thing where he comes out and says a bunch of things which ordinarily might get you, might be violative of terms of service. But then it's an amazing thing, though. Telling people that they can't hate other people is a surefire way to increase the hatred. People can think and feel what they want. They can be assholes if they want. And when you tell them they can't be assholes against specific groups, even in a thought crime sense, nothing real.
Right.
That's how you. That's how you exacerbate it.
But Eric's really hitting it. It's like Monty Python. It's like let's see if she drowns and is human, and if she doesn't drown, in that case, we know she's a witch and we need to burn her. That's what it feels like. It's like you can't say anything against. If you say anything against it, and again, I'm totally against censorship, and I don't care if the guy is literally the godson of Adolf and is expressing the same views. As long as unless there's actions that are being taken, I don't want the person silenced. I think that our standards for what is healthy free speech, as interpreted by the courts, not as interpreted by society, or there's no such thing as hate speech. That's a made-up term. And now I want to have the broadest free speech available. And that means not punishing anyone financially, criminally, or any other way, unless they're literally inciting violence and inciting on the Brandenburg standard, not the standard of January 6th Trump incitement, but actually like incitement, go do this here. Like, when Nick Fuentes gave his Sig Heil speech a few months back, I didn't want him punished or silenced for that, even though I thought, this guy really hates Jews.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, but that's his right.
Okay, let's get nuance, or let's throw a name in there since we're already getting controversial down the line. Yeah. Roger Waters.
Yeah, I don't think he likes Jews. and that's okay. That's okay.
Who's Roger? I'm going to sound like an idiot. I'm not sure I know who Roger Waters is.
Pink Floyd.
What did he say about the Jews?
Pretty much he does the tap dance thing of I am not an anti-Semite. I love everybody. Da 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 da, and then always goes after Israel in every term. It's the dance that Joe was talking about before. It's like, oh, I'm not anti-Semite. I'm just anti-Zionist. Yeah. But then it's like, well, then why is it 100% of your time, focus, and effort seems to keep repeating over and over and over the same people? There is a point I kind of go, well, you're not really talking about anybody else all that much. You expend a lot of energy focusing on Zionists. Mm. Why? Well, why is it only the Zionists? So you don't even talk about 9/11. That was kind of a bad thing. Do you talk about that? Do you talk about other things?
Well,
no.
God, if you're going to get them to talk about 9/11, I think you know where that conversation is going to go. Yeah. All right, now, gentlemen, I gotta duck out and go to the beach with my sister-in-law and wife.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
It makes me feel worse for me. It's raining outside, so it's not even a sunny day. So, woe is me.
Oh, yeah, suffering in Florida. But okay, I want to bring this back up because I'm all about the money. Little Rock was saying, I was watching the Schmidt interview on Patrick Bet-David's channel. He warned PBD about being anti-Semitic, and Vinny got spicy. Glad I caught you guys live. I guess that's Steve Schmidt. I think Steve Schmidt worked with John McCain, if I recall. and he's pretty much a Democrat now.
Oh, he's one of the Lincoln Project guys.
Oh, yeah, the one that wasn't arrested, right?
Well, yeah, apparently he was the one that wasn't trolling the young boys that were working for them.
Yeah, okay. I thought so. He's the other one. And I'm like, dude, I would be dropping that name so fast in that organization, but no, you're going to keep marching right along. That's very weird.
All right, I'm going to keep listening, and I might, if I can tune back in later, I will. But gentlemen, have a good day.
Awesome. All right, thanks, man.
All right. Now, how do I leave here? Like, go like that, and then I can't see anything.
It's the button on the bottom. Leave stream. All right. And then continuing on, Steve Schmidt from Lincoln Project. It was a good podcast. However, I cannot miss my favorite attorneys and Eric. Thank you, Little Rock.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Very kind.
And Joe too. No. All right. So anyway, I'm this whole anti-Semitic thing. It's very weird, but there are people who seem to struggle with that. I don't know if you know, a couple of weeks back, I interviewed literally the former head of the American Nazi Party. And we discussed that a little bit because it's very odd why some people are so stuck on the Jew front, if you will, where it was fascinating. I was watching a documentary where they were talking to somebody and he was like, oh, I feel bad about this person, that person, everything. And he pretty much is agreeing with everything, okay, somebody black and all that. And they were like, but there's no way I'm going to meet with a Jew. It's like, that is the final point for some people. And I get confused by that. Why?
We believe it's actually a miraculous thing. That it defies nature. It's a miraculous thing. There's always been, like from several millennia now, there's always been Jew hatred as long as there's been Jews. That's the nature of the world, and that's intentional. Like that, God created that intentionally.
Oh, well, good. It's working. Congrats.
Yeah. It's because it's kind of miraculous. Because if we're kicked down by societies and then we're dirty and we're a disease, and if we're successful in society, then we're manipulative. So it doesn't even matter which way. It doesn't matter whether Jews are so to speak, doing well or doing poorly. Either way, is the Jews are the problem. So that's something that basically goes literally back to Jacob and Esau in the Bible, and that's the nature of the world.
Okay, well, that makes my head hurt, and I'm not even Jewish, so I can't follow. Let's talk about a story. I sent this to Steve a while back. I don't know if you guys have heard about this. Dang, I wish I had Twitter pulled up. There is a gentleman who, shall we say, scammed. Well, no, he was convicted, so I can say he's scammed, right, Steve? On Shark Tank? Okay,
the Shark Tank guy.
Yeah. Okay, this is a really interesting case, and I definitely wanted to get everybody's thoughts on it. This former Shark Tank contestant, and I am slowly opening a window here, was convicted. There's more to it. He pled guilty as part of a deal for fraud, and I'm afraid if I can say it or not. YouTube supposedly changed its rules to where you can discuss cases dealing with SA, if you will, but then Nate keeps getting his videos spiked, so I don't even know what to do on that. But this guy had a deal going for fraud and sexual battery, if you will. Went in, and all of a sudden, the judge said, no, I don't accept the deal. Now, here's where it gets weird. As part of his deal, it was written in the deal, if the judge rejects the deal, he could change his plea to not guilty. The judge did not accept the plea of not guilty. Really? And went on to punish him for let me see. The deal was 48 months of supervised probation. It was obviously a ridiculous deal. I mean, 48 months probation, $300,000 in restitution. But the judge ignored all that, and he just sentenced him to 15 years in prison. He was led away in handcuffs. So I find this interesting, and I thought this would be a great topic to discuss, people's thoughts on that, because I'm going, well, okay, the guy, by all accounts, is a scumbag. Okay, he pled guilty. He pled guilty. He had a deal. We know he did it. Whatever. However, is that right? If you're making a deal, and the judge just say, never mind, and then throw it all away, is this justice? I'll go with Sean.
When you sign up, whenever you make a plea, I'm not sure was this federal or was this state court?
Utah state.
Okay. I mean, it should be in that state court. When he entered his plea initially, the judge said, "You understand, I'm not bound by the agreement you've made." I mean, that's here in Ohio and a lot of other things. I mean, I noticed every couple of times trials have gone forward and they end up pleading out and they stream that. The judge warned you, they're not bound by the agreement. The agreement's between you and the state. The state's making a recommendation, and the judge has the right to, sentence according to the guidelines.
But if there's a clause in there saying that if the judge refused it, that he could plead not guilty.
Yeah,
is that fraudulent representation from the state to make this person think that, hey, I can what is it, backy outsies or whatever?
Yeah. Well, I think if that's not legal and it's not something that can happen, I think he can argue I didn't make a knowing, voluntarily intelligent plea because there were terms in there that actually aren't possible. Now, it may have been written out that the state won't oppose him trying to withdraw his plea, but ultimately that's still the judge's discretion whether or not you withdraw your plea and are you allowed to change it. So I think it really comes down to actually what that document says, because I don't think it was necessarily, the state can't promise things they don't have control over ultimately anyway. So he might have an appealable issue.
Joe, you don't have thoughts?
I have thoughts. I mean, I'm
Steve.
I'm still processing, because what you were just saying there, when it does tend. We seem to play. I'm not a criminal defense attorney. I've never dealt with criminal cases. So I'm really looking at this more from a moralistic than from a legal perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from a legal perspective, it's our laws are supposed to reflect our morals. I've seen in criminal court, and Sean can confirm this, that normally that is precisely what we see happen. That once you accept this not guilty plea, the judge has almost seemingly unfettered license in what they're going to do from that stage forward, and you're locked into it. So I think it should be very clear. It should be mandatory that it's made clear to a defendant who's pleading not guilty that a rogue judge could completely screw up your life and just go as long as they're going to sentencing guidelines. And if you negotiate a deal that's way below that, in that case, that might go in smoke, and that you could be led away for 15 years. I think that's something they have to know beforehand in order for that to be morally acceptable. But I'm very bothered by the idea that, he thinks if there's specifically a clause in there saying if the judge rejects the sentencing that I can back out, and the judge basically, from a contractual perspective, that the judge is basically saying, I'm gonna look at the first half of this and accept you're not guilty and ignore the second half, which now gives you an opt out to reject my sentence and spin the wheel in court. That to me is it's obviously bothersome. It should be bothersome to everyone, that could happen to someone.
But Joe, it's not a contract with the judge.
Oh, I understand that.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking, Eric, is that if you're an average citizen, you'd think, oh my God, of course you had an agreement with the state. So if any part of it's broken, then it should be thrown out like a contract. But what Sean is saying is what the law is. So what I'm wondering is, do the people who write this article in the LA Times understand the difference between what the law is and what people might think it should be? Because it could be like just what Sean said is always the right answer. I need to see the document, right? Because it is hard. It's hard to believe that that the state and the judge would make such a basic error and then sentence this guy to jail, or that his lawyer wouldn't know what the law is. Like the judge can decide what the punishment is, or let's do a new experimental thing where we try and take the judge's discretion away. So it could be appealable, like Sean said, but it might not be, because it might be that the documents adequately covered it. But this guy's surprised that the judge let him down. The reporter's surprised. And so it gets twisted more into look at a rogue judge, because the reverse way to look at it is a rogue prosecutor who doesn't give adequate punishment. That, I'm not saying that happens all the time, but that can happen too, right? So if
I agree with that. But my issue is that if this is all true, and I'm sure you're right on the law all around, but then that should never have been written in the damn deal. Because you can't promise something that you can't give.
Depending on how it was written, I agree with you.
You're correct that the judge is not a party to the contract, obviously. The point is, though, that the court, so to speak, is now the beneficiary of the contract, and that now they don't have to try the case and they just simply have a guilty plea here. So in that sense, they're the beneficiary of the contract, and then ignoring the second half of it. Because I do think that it's saving court resources and that you don't now have to have a trial and things of that nature. I want to ask both of you gentlemen, though, with respect to appealing it, I would think that one avenue for appeal is if this is insufficiently explained to the defendant.
Oh, that's very true.
That's ineffective assistance of counsel. And potentially that could be a way for him to get out of it, no?
It could be ineffective assistance of counsel, but generally speaking, that if the judge didn't explain it properly, and most judges have like a boilerplate, what their state has said, this is acceptable, how you advise a defendant of their rights, unless that was deviated from, that's more likely where there would be a problem, because the judge goes over all that with you. He'll say, Mr. Neerman, you understand that this is the state's agreement with you.
Why is that Mr. Neerman? Sorry,
because we need a criminal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just go. Yes. No, I'm kidding.
Well, yes. So what's going to happen is, Joe, you're going to get accused of murder when you deal with Pisco in this debate. Whenever you guys do it,
it's Wednesday night. I'm going to be debating him about the impeachment inquiry.
So, but he's going to go through it. You understand these are your rights. You're giving up all these rights. You're going to say yes. It's going to be audible. You understand that this agreement's between you. I can do whatever I want as long as it's within the sentencing guidelines for this offense. I can sentence you accordingly and properly. I could sentence you today. I could do it at a later date. And you're going to say, yes, Your Honor, I understand all of that. So even if the attorney told him differently, if he says yes to all that, the courts are generally going to say, well, the court cleared it up. And, I think that's ultimately where that goes.
Okay. I wonder about that because I kind of think, have you read your phone's terms and conditions? He's sitting there going, yes, I made the deal. The deal's made. Yeah. You just say yes. Oh, too bad.
No, that's true. And I've had, I've taken appeals before where the guy says like, yeah, I just kind of went through the motions, and I was like, yeah, but the courts are going to presume you were being 100%. Like, appeals courts always look for a way to punt, and that's an easy way to punt. Like, you said yes, so therefore it's done. So if appeals courts didn't spend their time going like this, well, that's fixed. They'd actually have to do real work. So
does the court look at it as two separate deals? That first we look at the no guilty plea, and once that's done, now we start looking at what you negotiate and whether or not we want to accept it. Is there like a sort of severance in the mind of the court when they're dealing with these guilty pleas?
Oh, you mean like the guilt phase and punishment phase within the deal?
Yeah, exactly.
Not in my experience. Generally, like the judge, says, you understand what this guilty plea means, and you understand as a result of this guilty plea, the state is recommending X. Here's your maximum punishment. That's generally, in my experience, it's all kind of like it's all one thing. It's considered, it kind of flows naturally. You deal with your, as part of your plea, you have to talk about the punishment.
Yeah, I don't know. It just, I'm sure this is legal, but it's one of those that feels gross.
Certainly it could be, and it could be 100% wrong.
But by the way, the deal shouldn't have been made either. I can agree on that end too. That, I mean, this guy, if it was like a 5 years or something, he should have had time. If he's,
it makes you think one of two things: either they have scant evidence, or that he's connected somehow.
Oh, he's connected probably.
I mean, that's what it makes you think, that it's one of those two things, that they have very scant evidence or that he's connected, because that type of deal.
But Joe, what kind of powerful group could he be connected to that could control?
I will always consult Joe to find out
Utah any such group.
They don't have that power in Utah. Yes.
Yeah, seriously.
Now, I will just say, Eric, one last thing.
So,
I've had judges reject pleas before that I've, one time as a prosecutor, I had a judge reject a plea, but then a couple times as a defense attorney, the judges rejected a plea. But they rejected it at the stage of, hey, Your Honor, here's what we're trying to propose. And the judge says, no, I'm not doing that. So well beforehand it's not going to happen, and you have to go back to the drawing board. So
which feels correct. That feels right to me. I don't like this whole thing of, I don't know. Again, that's just me. I'm not a lawyer, but as a human who looks at it, I'm like, this whole thing sounds.
The one thing for that on the positive side, if you don't like it, you know what happened as soon as that guy got taken to the jail? Word spread through that jail like wildfire. This judge is nuking people. So guess what? There are people probably not willing to take deals in front of that judge at this point, because he just nuked somebody. So that is the, he's going to have to deal with that possibly going forward. He just now blew up his docket with a ton of trials because guys don't trust him to find the agreement reasonable.
Right. So it could also be harming justice in of itself, because if everybody knows that the deals can't be depended upon, they might say, oh, you know what? I'm not going to turn that person in. Well, maybe this puts a wrench into the prisoner's dilemma. Everybody just shut up.
Well, I think it's more about crowding that docket with potential trials, from what Sean said.
That too.
Because you could tell the DA, you don't have the stroke with this judge to convince him to give my client 3 years. This judge might give him 10. So we can't plea it out. Look what happened the last time you did a deal with this guy. Or anybody that appears in front of that judge, just like what Sean's saying. Once you kind of break that understanding and you can't explain why it's an anomaly, and maybe the judge did or didn't, I don't know, then you create a trust issue through people that, because it's transactional, right? I mean, most cases plea out, most civil cases settle, and trust is an element of all of that.
But I'm going even further. What about people who might flip, who now say, can't risk that?
Yeah, that too.
It's neutering, the judge is neutering the DA. Because Steve's correct that, you can't. I would look at the DA and say, it's not like I trust you personally. I just don't trust that you have the authority to sign off on this thing and the jurisdiction to see it through. So
okay,
maybe that judge hates Shark Tank.
Oh, he might.
It might be it. Just don't bring me somebody from Shark Tank. You're okay.
He probably was offended by the deal, and I don't blame him on that. But anyway, let me go for it. This came in really early, but I did want to bring it up because, the Russell brand, the gift that keeps on giving, I guess. HelloFresh pulled their ads from Rumble, along with Burger King and some other company I never heard of, and others. And yes, I have done a HelloFresh ad or two, a handful of times. So the question is, am I pushing HelloFresh? Technically, I pushed HelloFresh because they paid me to sponsor them back in the day. I can't just go back and excise that from the catalog. That's part of the contract that I signed. I did the ad, I got the money, and it's in the catalog. It has to stay up there. I think even on this channel, there was a HelloFresh ad. I don't remember, though. Will I do an ad for them tomorrow? No, I don't plan to do an ad for HelloFresh tomorrow, but I do want to discuss it just for a minute. What do you guys think about that kind of situation? Like, there I am. Okay, I did an ad for them. It doesn't mean I believe in the company today. They could have been a great company yesterday. I mean, how many people were pitching for Black Rifle Company before they screwed over Rittenhouse?
Bud Light.
Or Bud Light, yeah. Do you feel that creators, et cetera, should be held to account from sponsors that they've had in the past?
No, that's just basement agitation boiling to the surface for people to have some reason to be mad at you about something you can't change. So it allows them to be frustrated pointlessly.
Yeah. Right. I mean, because
what he said.
There's no way. I mean, you might find out tomorrow, like HelloFresh is running like child slave labor somewhere. Like at the time you didn't know that. So no, But yeah, it gives somebody that thing to latch onto and a thing to scream about. So,
All right, cool.
and also
Nice.
Burger King's got bigger issues anyway. So, like their Whopper lawsuit.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a terrible move. And by the way, I have mixed feelings about this, okay? Because I don't like cancel culture, period. And it kind of goes both ways. So the same way I don't like people going and tagging companies to boycott. To me, this is a problem that just goes around in circles. We need to stop it. I mean, on both sides. It's like, stop attacking sponsors, stop attacking people, stop attacking this. I understand if you don't believe in something, like I have trouble buying anything from Nike because they sponsored Mike Vick, after he did all that stuff with the dogs. I have trouble with that as a personal choice, but
I think
worry
boycotts
goes
are very
too far.
different from cancel culture. I think they're actually in certain ways the exact opposite of each other, and I'll explain to you why.
Okay.
The problem with cancel culture is that you have a minority which is trying to dictate to the majority what can happen. We're very, very angry and we're very, very loud and we're a minority. So we're going to scream about this until you do what we want and silence this person, remove this person from being able to have a livelihood or do whatever they want to do. That's cancel culture. And that is the minority trying to dictate to the majority.
Mm-hmm.
But a boycott, there's nothing more democratic in a sense than a boycott, because a boycott is basically saying, we don't like this company because of X, Y, Z, and I'm not going to be patronizing it, and I don't think you should be patronizing it. So when someone is doing that, especially when it's targeted against a specific company, because you're saying, I don't like the way this company does their things. I don't like the way the leadership does their things. I don't like the way Bud Light is promoting whatever it is that they're promoting. I'll refrain from using certain words in order to protect this stream that I already nuked when I first came in here and brought up Nick, what's his face? But yeah, but I'll tell you that over there, to the degree a boycott is successful, that is people voting with their dollars and saying, and now you put the party that's embracing whatever it is that has become objectionable in a position of saying, is it worth it to us to stand behind this and support it, or is it not worth it to us financially? That's capitalism.
To be fair, let me clarify my position, because okay. I think that I misstated it. My biggest issue, and I agree with you 100%, is, and I think it's more on the cancel culture side, but I saw it happening with Rumble, and I posted an article, I think it was a Guardian, I think it was Daily Mail, when they said, we noticed that Russell Brand is still monetized on Rumble. And we know this because we see advertisements from, and then they list off all the companies. And I think that's full on cancel culture in the sense of going and trying to shame advertisers to pull their advertisements from a particular creator or platform, if that makes sense. And I don't really like that maneuvering. Now, it is different than a boycott where you're free to buy what you want. Like I said, I don't do Michael Vick or whatever, or Nike. I have issues with it and things like that. But I have problems, and I think that that's where the line is being blurred a little, because you're almost
because that is attempted cancel culture.
That's
why that's so objectionable, because it's the cancel culture element to it. Which is like they're the minority, which not voting with their dollars, they're voting with their voice and saying our voice is more significant because we're the squeakiest wheel. So you're removing the capitalism element from it, and you're basically saying we're going to basically make for example, when people will be screaming outside of a place to try and keep customers from going in, so they're basically trying to affect the business beyond what they are by basically giving people a reason to not go in there that has nothing to do with what they're objecting to, but that you're trying to find ways to make it more objectionable. So that makes it not a boycott. That's what makes it cancel culture.
Well, and I guess what I'm trying to go further on is I don't like that going either direction.
Oh, I agree with you.
I think that we knock this shit off, and there is the reverse side. I remember Chick-fil-A when the owner said, "Hey, I don't like gay marriage," and so they went after Chick-fil-A. But then somebody mentioned boycott, which is kind of the opposite of that, where everybody said, "Okay, well, we're going to go endorse Chick-fil-A." I think all this it goes too far. But anyway, that I guess wraps up the HelloFresh thing. I am. Mixed feelings. The whole Russell Brand story, I feel like we talked about last week. There's two stories, in my opinion, which is his personal situation, which I don't really feel like going into, yes or no. And then there's the actual situation that Rumble and others face, where you have government figures writing to companies, potentially threatening them. And now they're talking about, was it creating new agencies just for the purpose of screwing with creators and platforms. And
Really?
that to me is the biggest story of all, is the freezing of all of us. I mean, it affects us directly.
Yeah.
And I'm selfish.
What are you, which
I haven't,
countries-
well, England. I mean, but England doesn't have free speech.
Oh,
anyway.
you're talking about what England did with Russell Brand.
Right. Well, they're building out. They're looking at an agency. I forgot the name. I haven't gotten it all down. Creating a new content type of cop, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
that's what we need.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that's a short conversation, because I think every one of us would easily agree with that. Most of your audience would agree that that's insanity. So, yeah. I mean, it should be noted. Definitely. I'm glad it's important to bring it up so people are aware that it's happening and can complain to their local governance about it. But yeah, it's obviously it's some powerful group.
Yeah, it's
some
chilling.
secret power.
Well, here, I'm going to have a short conversation. I bet people were banging on in the chat earlier, and Dianne Feinstein has passed away. I have one question. Oh, didn't that already happen?
They're finally reporting it.
No, I'm just kind of like, what has she been doing? They've been just rolling around. People have questioned if she was even there or not. So it's sort of like, okay, that's kind of the least newsy news of all. The only thing that we'll watch is, which black female will Gavin Newsom stick in the Senate.
Yeah.
Moving on.
And will it be like someone who was female 6 years ago, or will it be?
Anyway, the Senate's at 50-49. That's gone in 10 minutes. We're talking about a supermajority state, California. You're not going to have an effect.
Rush it through now.
Yeah, it's not like somewhere where you have a Democratic governor and a Republican senator who passes away. Then you're going to see, oh, damn, that's an issue. This is a non-issue. This is like AOC's seat. She can, whatever. They can put a glass of water, to quote Pelosi and AOC.
Here's the interesting thing, though. This is the really interesting thing, because we're looking at an imminent government shutdown that's supposed to commence tomorrow at midnight. Mm-hmm. And in order to avoid that, they need to pass all these different appropriations bills, which, for those of you who are not really familiar with how Congress uses terminology, that just basically means how they're going to spend their money. Which there's mandatory that they cover a minimum of, there are 12 different areas, which include the mandatory spending, which is where 60 to 70% of the money goes. And when I last heard about, they had passed 4 of them, and they were close to passing 3 more. That's what Matt Gaetz said. And that's what he had said, he reported 2 days ago. But the interesting thing is, if it could be that there's going to be some really close votes there. And if they don't have all 100 senators, because you don't just need the House, obviously, to pass these bills, but they got to go through the Senate. And if there's some close bills, it really could change the landscape as to how things happen. If Gavin Newsom spends 2 to 3 weeks trying to decide who her replacement is going to be, that could actually have an impact with respect to the shutdown, potentially.
Yeah, it could.
I think a shutdown is definitely coming.
Hey, Eric. Sorry.
Sure.
Hey, I have to hit the road. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thanks for coming by, dude.
Peace, brother.
Yeah. See you, Joe. See you, Steve.
Good seeing
Have
you.
a good day, everybody.
See you. By the way, if people haven't figured out about this stream, we never know who's here. Even the thumbnail. I talked to Rekieta last night, and he was going to try to make it if he could, but he couldn't get.
He's still
might. You never know, but it was his idea that we made him. I said, "Do I put you in the thumbnail?" He said, "Well, you as long as you do it translucently, like 40% there." So we have the ghost of Nick Rekieta behind us in the thumbnail. If anybody's wondering, that was Nick, the inside joke. And I had to pick the Pope shot, obviously, because there's a connotation. All right, so. Right. Mark has a story here. Good question. I feel like this is probably a non-story, but
really,
governor of Arizona is gone for a day. It could be anything. It could be, it's probably a HIPAA thing. She might have had a procedure. Who knows? And then people are saying that the power was handed to the Secretary of State or Treasurer, for one day. What about the lieutenant governor? Well, I just looked it up. Arizona voted to have a lieutenant governor in late 2022. They don't have a lieutenant governor. So if you don't have a lieutenant governor, you can't hand over the reins to a lieutenant governor. And by the way, it's not the first time that has happened. Andrew Johnson had no vice president. Truman had no vice president. And LBJ had no vice president. A lot of people don't know that until they actually ran for re-election.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I think I heard it got extended out from 1 day to like 3 days.
Well, I don't know that. Okay.
So that to me, and there's all sorts of talk about there being purportedly, I mean, there are rumors that are circling around about various charges that maybe that or scandals that are brewing around her. And I'll tell you this, I'm not positive she's ever coming back. I'll tell you
that's wild.
I mean, I think that it's a very, very strange thing. You're right. It could be something as innocuous as a HIPAA, and we'll forget about it by next week. It's very possible. But I mean, it's also possible that there's some sort of behind the scenes thing which is happening that it's weird to turn over power like that. Every governor goes on vacation. They don't work for 4 years straight. They all go on vacation, leave the state, and go somewhere.
Sure, but the reason why I said HIPAA is like if she had to have some if she was literally put out, for a medical thing that could be an overnight deal or could even be a 2-day deal, she would not be compassed to be able to act on behalf of the government, because if you're put under for surgery, you cannot do it. Even I think Biden had to hand it over to Kamala for a colonoscopy or some crap. So I don't know. I just don't want to read too much into it just because something is happening, if that makes sense.
Right. No, and look, it really could be something innocuous. I'm just saying, I don't know. It's a very, very strange thing to do this. Biden announced that he had a colonoscopy. You know what I'm saying? Like we all knew what it was. To do it with this, hey, someone else in power, not telling you why. You could say that, it's a medical procedure and everything's gonna be fine in 2 days. You can say that and respect her privacy, but to not give any sort of reason at all, to me, that's very weird. And then for it to be extended, like I initially thought it was gonna be like for 12 hours, and now it's gonna be for like a day and a half. That too is weird, because if it was a planned health thing, well, in that case, you would think that she knew beforehand how long she would need someone to step in for her, not that it would be, later adjusted and extended out. So yeah, I don't know exactly. I'm not that sure that this is something that
here we go. I've got Arizona Central headline. I don't know if this matters. It's September 28th. They're saying where she is.
Oh, are they?
She was in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday morning for a meeting about border issues. Flew back to the state to meet with Biden. And
so why would she cede power if she's just going to D.C.?
That's weird.
I'm not sure.
So we can rule out
it's already done, apparently.
Oh,
It's
she's
saying,
back in? Is she back
yeah,
in?
it's saying that Yi, the treasurer, was acting governor for less than 24 hours.
Oh,
Okay.
Well,
Well, there you go.
Then it is a nothing burger.
And I don't know. It's just
Maybe she was just getting a booster and didn't know how it would turn out.
and it says state Republicans disavowed the widespread internet rumor of Hobbs' indictment Monday, noting that the state Senate does not issue indictments.
Oh, okay.
And that was Republicans there. So I don't know.
All right.
So,
So maybe this will remain a mystery. This and the second shooter will remain mysteries in governance that we'll never get answers to. I don't know.
second shooter. Oh my! Oh, by the
Eric
way,
is answering that, though.
celebrating you.
Yeah, thank you. That was for my distinguishing. He sent that out when I distinguished between
The cancel
board
culture.
ranking-
Yeah.
cancel culture.
And made me clarify my position.
Maybe she's spending her time wooing Governor Newsom for like that Feinstein position. So that's what Katie Hobbs is doing.
Wrong state, dude.
I know. But, you know,
Well, I can move.
yeah, I'm there.
I mean, let's be honest. It's obviously a way to slide in and do damage because you're only in position for a year.
Yeah.
We're too close to the end of this year. The election is 2024 for 2025, right? So remember,
you're saying for
Feinstein was
Feinstein's
retired.
position?
Yeah, Feinstein was going to retire.
Yeah, but
For-
often they end up once they hold that seat.
Oh, for sure.
It's very easy to hold. That's what happened with Alex Padilla when he stepped in for Kamala.
Well, here's what I want to see happen, or I want to see go down. And Mark and I have been talking about it on America's Untold Stories. We'll probably go into it further because Mark lives in L.A. There's a war going on in California right now because somebody's been eyeballing Feinstein's position. And you know who that is? Trump's favorite, Shifty Schiff.
Oh,
But Schiff is not a black female. And that's why I brought up the black female, because Newsom, just like Biden, promised, Biden promised
did
for
he
VP.
promise black female?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And so now you have Schiff, who was eyeballing that seat. Feinstein's retiring. He can consolidate his slimy power up the ladder. And I love it. I'm like, ooh, some internal fighting that's going to be happening. Now, there's an interesting other person who is eyeballing that seat and maybe running in 2024. And he's a former governor of California.
Schwarzenegger?
Yeah.
Really?
Hey, that might be the one Republican who could pull it off.
He's not getting that seat.
I don't know.
How
he
old
could win.
is he now? He looks like he's been withering away.
No, he's got the Keith Richards genes.
I don't know. I'm how old is? I mean,
He's in his 70s.
Yeah, I don't think that's Newsom's going to give it to some 70-year-old white dude.
Newsom's not going to give it to a Republican. Are you high?
Oh,
No, I said he's going to run for it, and I'm saying that
Oh.
he actually could possibly win it.
maybe.
Out of all the Republicans I could think of in California, he's one who maybe could do it. I mean, it's such a long shot deal. And then he'd be like Collins in Maine or somebody. Obviously, he's not really a hardcore Republican or a MAGA guy by any
I'd love
stretch
to see
of
Larry
imagination.
Elder do it, but
But Larry Elder, I don't think can win.
I don't know. I mean,
He couldn't beat Newsom on
yeah,
that.
I understand that. But I think Newsom is protected from on high.
Of course they are. And you don't think that they're going to run somebody out to primary Elder or to screw up the vote count like they did last time with the recall? Remember how coincidentally suddenly people started to show up and it ate into Elder support? Schellenberger. Remember good old Schellenberger came out of nowhere? It's like, oh, all of a sudden here's a Republican candidate in there and it split the Elder vote.
Well, I don't. I think that certain people garner more effort in that regard than others. Meaning, when it's opposing Trump, I think that there's always certain efforts, and then I think there are more efforts in that regard, depending on who is running for both the Republican side and the Democrat side. So, and I think that Newsom has a lot of support from people who he's familial with Nancy Pelosi, and like he's a nephew or something like that of Nancy Pelosi.
Sure. Well, the problem is that you have two tracks too, because you have the Kamala Harris side and you have the Newsom side. They don't get along.
Yeah,
there are competing interests that are in there.
who does get along with Kamala? Like seriously,
Black women. She's very popular. Just ask Larry Elder amongst Black female Democrat voters. Very popular. And Sonny Hostin literally said on The View what will happen if they dump her. That Black women will stay home. They won't vote. And it will harm them. Uh-oh, here comes Nate.
What's up, guys?
Nate.
We were talking about your favorite vice president.
Oh, which one? Dan Quayle?
No.
That's pretty quick.
The good old days.
The good old days.
I would argue that there is a similarity between Dan Quayle and Kamala Harris, in my opinion. And that is this. If you want to make yourself not a target because the person replacing you is worse than you can imagine, both are good choices.
You know what I like is the fact that any criticism of Kamala Harris is because she's a Black woman, and I'm like, what? I'm like,
No,
don't they realize that they criticize, like, what vice president has been looked at as competent? Mike Pence was thought to be
Dick Cheney.
Dan Quayle, he was the only one, right? That's like the only one. Dan
he was
Quayle,
confident but evil.
yes, like all of them were considered dummies, and now she's the newest dumb. Biden was considered a dummy.
I know.
And now she's not. Now they say, oh, she's a dummy. Okay, now it's because of racism. I'm like, no, matter of fact, they can't treat. They're literally treating her like every other vice president. So.
Let me get through some super chats that I got Nate here. But Joseph, I don't buy some brands for a number of reasons. Don't insist. So kind of on what I was talking about a little bit there. UK Min True Russell Brand. I don't know what that is. I apologize. Little Rock, Southern Law. What state are you in? He has a license in Arkansas, Arizona, and Tennessee.
North Carolina.
Are you licensed all over the place, or just North Carolina?
Just here.
Just there. And then I think he had the same question for Joe. Are you licensed in New Jersey and New York?
Just New York.
Just New York. So you hide in Jersey, but you're licensed in New York. Let me see. She's getting appointed as Kamala's VP since Biden is stepping down. LOL. Katie Hobbs. Very funny.
I think she doesn't have a shot at becoming P. But I think Gavin Newsom has a good shot if Biden does step down.
Here we go, Joe. On Katie Hobbs. Don't buy into the internet rumors. It's in their constitution. If she leaves the state for any reason, someone else is appointed as interim gov.
I was unaware of that. That's an interesting fact. Thanks, Chuggy.
Yeah, thank you.
And that makes sense.
I'm from Arizona.
Do you know there have been times where we haven't had a vice president? And
yes, Johnson, Truman, and LBJ. You forgot LBJ.
LBJ too, yeah.
And now.
Sorry, I was doing my Kamala laugh.
Who was the one? But what happens if there's no VP? There's an acting president, right? Does the Speaker of the House become acting president? Because I know that there's been one point in time the one time there has been an acting president was the January 20th have occurred on a Sunday. So the term was over on a Sunday. So the Speaker of the House became acting president for that day. And then January 21st, the president was sworn in. So that was the only time we had an acting president. But
it would have to be Speaker of the House because that's a line of succession, right? It's president, vice president, speaker. And down the line, there's been a couple TV series and movies, of course, made by on the line of succession where you can go way, way down the line if enough people fall. Remember, that was the premise of Battlestar Galactica and the Kiefer Sutherland show.
Nate, how do you feel about? Oh, I'm sorry. Nate, how do you feel about this whole impeachment inquiry?
I kind of feel like, all right. So the first impeachment with Trump, I thought was nonsense. The second one, I didn't think they had enough, and I got to be consistent. This third one, this one against Biden, I don't see anything. Like if Hunter Biden was president, damn right. But I don't think they have enough. But I think this is what Congress does. So I don't have a problem with the inquiry because this is what Congress does. You look into shit. But
they open the doors. I mean,
yeah. So I don't have a problem with the inquiry.
Back and forth.
I think the Democrats are pretending like we can't even look into it. I think that's nonsense. But I don't think there's enough. No scholar that I've seen believes that there's enough to actually vote on articles of impeachment. There may be something that they can find later, but I don't think there's anything now. But the inquiry, I agree with. I think they should look. I think that's their job to look.
So that's Jonathan Turley's position. Basically, is precisely that's what he was expressing yesterday. That there's definitely enough here for an inquiry, but that you need the evidence in order to support it. But I want to ask you to consider this. All right, and this is something that I don't think the Republicans. I don't think they're angling this entire thing properly, because we've seen the Democrats shift from saying he had no involvement to Hunter Biden to he's a father who loves his son, or then there was then when it became clear that what Hunter Biden was selling, that he's selling the Biden brand, which I think they've come to grips with. He was selling the illusion of access to power. Okay, so that's all. That's what they're basically saying.
Was it illusion? I thought we were helping a country out right now and sending lots of money, more money than anywhere in the world. We just keep sending money, and it's unlimited. It's a bottomless pit of money, more and more and more money.
Okay, I certainly agree with you. You're not look if you're going to preach anti-supporting Ukraine war, I'm going to be in your camp all day long. I'm fine. I agree with you on that, but obviously Hunter Biden wasn't pitching for the Ukrainian war. He was specifically pitching on behalf of Burisma. But
the relationship is building a relationship between his family and Ukraine, and you had Biden quite literally saying Biden literally did what they accused Trump of doing, and he bragged about it when he said, "I told them fire that prosecutor." Blah 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 blah. So
yeah, but Biden has the cover. Don't forget, he has the cover of every other, foreign minister at that time was saying fire that guy too.
No,
so
but here's
that's Biden's cover, right? We were all saying it in unison. I wasn't the only one. Matter of fact, there was even Republicans on, also saying that same thing too at that time. So just to give the full record,
right? But here's the point that I would make. Okay, so let's assume that Hunter Biden is this master manipulator, that he's selling to Romania and China, CEFC and Burisma, this illusion of access of power. But really everything Joe Biden ever did was purely 100% in the interest of America. Okay? I'm going to take their position, and I want to point out how, as a matter of law, there should be summary judgment on this impeachment. And here's why. If there is an illusion, once there's his son is trying to sell this illusion of access of power, and we know for sure that Biden was certainly aware of what his son was selling. Once Joe Biden takes steps to help his son sell that illusion, whether those steps are sitting down for dinner with these people, whether it's phone calls in to talk about the weather and just be like, hey, I'm right here in the background, or anything far graver than that. Once he is taking these steps as vice president, he is basically announcing to the most evil, scummiest people on earth, the biggest oligarchs on earth who are corrupt criminals, that Washington is for sale. And that is why he needs to be impeached, because he has humiliated our country in front of the worst, most terrible people on earth. I don't care if everything he did was exactly what Barack Obama told him to do. I don't care if Barack Obama, if the situation with that whole firing of Shokin, where he says, hey, you don't believe me? Call Obama. I don't care if Obama would be like, yeah, I did tell him to say that. I don't care, because what happened here was his son went and said, you know why this is happening? Because you're giving me money. When you give me money, my dad will jump for you. And once he knows Hunter's selling that, which he certainly did, and now Joe takes steps to secure that illusion, to validate that illusion as being legitimate, he has sold our country out and humiliated us, that everyone on earth now, the worst people in the most underworld positions and the most powerful of those people, all believe that Washington can be bought, and that illusion is being sold by our very vice president. To me, that alone is an impeachable offense, no matter what steps he took on policies to actually effectuate the wishes of Burisma, CFC, Romania, or whomever. It's that he helped his son convince the world that Washington is corrupt. That, I don't understand how anyone says that is not an impeachable offense.
All right. Now, Steve will settle this because he has thoughts.
I'm stunned that there are people who cannot connect or will not refuse to connect the obvious evidence of what that family was doing with the evidence that shows it. They were selling more than the illusion of access. They were selling access. Now, what they did with it, you can access somebody, whether you get what you want is potentially something different, but it's a marvel that they're like, oh, well, the address on there doesn't mean that they actually took the money to the house. And, that family was taking money from overseas to do things that they wanted to do, buy crack, guns, prostitutes from overseas and things. And what were the people paying for? Why were they paying this money? What did they think they were going to get? They were going to get either a policy decision that they favored or at least access to try and convince somebody of that. So, it's completely crooked. He's obviously not the only person who's ever done it. I don't mean that he's special in what he's doing, but everybody ought to condemn it, right? And if you're mad because how Trump valued Mar-a-Lago and stuff like that, and that's really offensive to you when he got a loan, then this ought to be offensive too, right? And it's disappointing to see that the power dynamics of politics means you can never even concede even a single obvious thing if it favors your guy.
Yeah, I agree with that 1,000%. And I do think Hunter was selling access, but I'm an evidence and facts first guy.
Well,
and
hold
on. Before you guys cut me off, hold on. You guys can't continue to do this, right? If I'm going to give a counterpoint, as soon as I start talking, you're going to cut me off. Like, give me a second. Let me at least see my point. The only thing I'm saying is that, hey, listen, I do agree. I believe there's a lot of smoke out here. I think there's a lot of smoke, but I think if there was hard evidence to show A equaled B, then I think it would be there. I think Joe is right. I think Southern Law is right. I think this is extremely concerning, and I think if you're going to condemn Trump for doing it, condemn the Bidens for doing it. But I also believe that if they had hard, concrete evidence to show Hunter wasn't acting on his own, which that's essentially what the Biden is saying, he was acting on his own. He was selling access. I think everyone can see that. But Biden's thing is, you haven't connected it to me. Just because he was doing it doesn't mean he connected to me. Now, I think you would have to be ridiculous not to easily make that connection. But in criminal justice, you need to show that connection in some way. They have bank records. They haven't shown it the bank records. They show that something went to the house. That may be a little bit more to push us to that conclusion, because I do believe that. But I think you need evidence to make it a little bit tighter. So I don't think we all have different opinions about it. I think we all saying, yes, this is more likely to happen, but the standard isn't what's likely. The standard is generally beyond a reasonable doubt.
Isn't the impeachment the trial, Nate, though? I'm just asking you, isn't the impeachment the trial where evidence is produced and shown?
Yeah, but I'm saying you have to, that's what you're going through the inquiry for. That's why I said I think there's enough to inquire, but I don't think right now, and again, most constitutional scholars agree that there's not enough to vote on to have an impeachment articles right now, but there's way more than enough to look into this.
My point was directed at what evidence are we looking for specifically? And I don't think we need to look for evidence that Joe Biden got money. I don't think we need to look for evidence that Joe Biden actually effectuated policies to assist these corrupt companies. That the only evidence we need to find is that he was helping his son sell his access of illusion for him to be clearly impeached. That alone, helping sell the notion that you agree that Hunter Biden this is what he was selling, the illusion of access. And that if he was just helping sell the illusion of access and never actually gave that access, but he's helping his son sell that idea that Washington is corrupt. That is the level of evidence we should be looking for. I'm not arguing as far as like what evidence is here and is this evidence or is that evidence. I'm talking about what yardstick of evidence are we looking for in order for this to be considered that he should be impeached. And that's my point, is that the level of evidence we need to get to is not nearly as high in order for everyone to be able to agree that he should be impeached, that we actually show that he got money or that he acted against America's interests. But we only need to show that he was helping his son sell this scummy idea that Washington is for sale to the highest bidder.
Yeah, and I think we're essentially we are saying the same exact thing. I agree with exactly what you said 100%. This is why we should look into it. Me and you agree. I think this is not enough for an impeachment, but I agree 100% what you just said. This is more than enough here to look into.
But here's the question, though. So in that case, I want to ask you. So now that we agree on what the yardstick is, as to what should be impeachable. Now that you agree with me that once we can show that he's helping his son sell this illusion, even if he didn't get money, even if he didn't change policy, so it doesn't have to be that he's firing Shokin because Burisma wants him to do it. But if he is helping Hunter sell the idea that to Burisma, that's why he's doing it, that alone is impeachable. So just to be 100% clear that we're on the same page on that. Mm-hmm. So in that case, you tell me now. We know that now let's look at the evidence that's been presented already that helps establish that he was helping Hunter sell that illusion.
You switched a little on me there. At first, we were talking about looking into the impeachment inquiry, what's enough, and before that, you remember you said, even though this may not be enough for an impeachment, but obviously there's enough to look into it. And I was like, yeah, I agree with that. I agree, definitely enough to look into, definitely. But now you're saying this is enough to impeach. But you did say summary impeachment before. So
maybe there's
maybe I misunderstood. So if you're saying there is enough to just impeach now, then I think the standard is a little bit higher for that. I think you need more.
So tell me why that would not be impeached. Why is that not something someone should be impeached for? That they're helping, that they're vice president and working to help a family member sell the idea that he is for sale.
Well, all right. So there's two issues. One, I'm not too sure if you can be impeached on crimes that you did before office, because impeachment generally is the things that you do during office. So we'll be kind of stretching impeachment to crimes that occurred before you became president, because you was vice president at the time. So even assuming that's the case, then I would just need my standard for impeachment would be high crimes and misdemeanors, which would essentially mean that I would need something that would convince a reasonable person beyond a reasonable doubt. So if you're saying it's selling access, and you're saying that there's hard evidence to show that Biden was complicit in selling access, then I would need to see, what criminal statute or whatever that you're pointing to.
No, I'm not. Oh, so let's time out for a second here. I'm not saying selling access. I'm saying no, that bar should be lower. I'm saying he's selling the illusion of access. That alone is something that is a betrayal of our country.
Okay, so I guess statute or what's criminal statute or something like explain to me what generally high crimes and misdemeanors is, to me, means there has to be, and this is again all the scholars generally agree. Even though it's a political process, high crimes and misdemeanors means there's got to be some type of crime that you're committing. So what criminal act are you saying that would precipitate this impeachment?
Historically, that's not exactly the case, because with the second Trump impeachment, there was no actual crime. There was no.
I agree.
There was no high crime.
I don't think he did anything criminal in either one of the impeachments. To be fair to you, I don't think either one there was anything criminal even proven, and that's why I think he was rightfully acquitted in those impeachments. But so I'm just saying, what's the standard? If we're lowering the standard for impeachment, I just disagree. I think they
I'm not lowering the standard for
impeachment should be high crimes and misdemeanors, and that requires proof beyond a reasonable doubt in my mind. But
but my question to you is this: the term "and misdemeanors," like, how does that? I mean, so we know we can get some sort of ideas to what high crimes are, but misdemeanors, to me, when they say "and misdemeanors," they clearly don't mean a misdemeanor of someone who does some sort of slap someone across the face, right? That's not what they're not talking and getting a misdemeanor battery. They're obviously, the intent of the Constitution is something that seems grossly egregious. Would you not agree with that interpretation?
I've been reading the politically incorrect guide to
Yeah.
the Constitution recently, and
Mhm.
that was something that was being discussed. And I don't know, but what I interpreted from the definition is the high means that you're in a high position. Now you just go to crimes and misdemeanors. So it's not necessarily, yes, it could be a slapping somebody or a minor level. You're in a high position, you committed a crime or misdemeanor.
I don't like that.
That's the best way that I'm trying to put it. It's a law professor was saying that, but I don't
like
know if
that
I'm
because
expressing it
impeachment
well
is always someone who's in a high position.
Well,
So you don't need to use the word high then.
Because
why
they're
are
always
you
in a position.
misdemeanors? So it makes sense.
That's my explanation. It makes sense.
I would say there's been two interpretations of the high crimes and misdemeanors. There was the one for Clinton, right? And the one for Clinton committed a crime. So I think that was easy, right? He committed a crime. So that impeachment was justified. He literally committed a crime. But in the first and then the second Trump impeachment, Trump's legal team, which I agreed with, made the argument that high crimes and misdemeanors are essentially saying you're saying that the president committed a crime. Now, why was that important? Is because the president technically cannot commit a crime as he's serving as president because he is a chief law enforcement officer. So impeachment was a way to hold a president who committed some type of offense accountable or removing them from office. So let's say, for instance, Trump killed someone, or not Trump, Biden killed someone while he's president. He couldn't be prosecuted for that, but he could be thrown out of office. And then you may have some issues after that. So what I'm saying is that the standard that the Trump team put out, that Dershowitz, Barnes, all these people said this should be the standard of it being criminal, of this should be criminal. Now, that is in conflict with what the Supreme Court said, because the Supreme Court said essentially it's whatever the House decides it is. So just so everybody knows, there has been, for instance, a judge who was impeached for being drunk.
Okay.
There was a judge who was impeached for drunkenness. So that wasn't a crime. Yeah, that wasn't a crime, right? But again, the standards change. So anybody can be impeached for anything.
Is attempted bribery? So would you not consider this to be attempted bribery?
It could be. Yes.
No, in other words, he's selling the illusion. I'm saying should be a high crime, and I'm saying that an actual crime of there being an attempt to extort a bribe from someone by giving this illusion of access. So how is that not a high? You're saying there's no crime here, so you don't understand how there can be impeachment. And what I'm saying is selling the illusion of access. Just the illusion alone is an attempt to get a bribe from someone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Again, I'm considering an impeachment inquiry, like the cops looking into it and figuring out all the evidence, and then give you hard evidence. So you're talking about, I think, an impeachment is essentially an indictment, right? I don't know if there's enough for the indictment as of yet, because again, and maybe this is my ignorance on the facts. I don't know all of the evidence, but the evidence that I've seen now, I don't think there's enough for an indictment. I think there's more than enough. That's an understatement to look into it. Yeah.
Okay, so with respect to the evidence, there are pictures of him with these individuals. There are numerous text messages from Hunter Biden referencing his father, whether it's referencing him as dad, you're talking to his uncle and referring to him as your brother, or the big guy, which he's been referred to as the big guy by Bobolinsky. And then later, after Bobolinsky came out, so then we see Ukraine texts, and that Bobolinsky was dealing with CEFC in China, but we see that this was a common reference to Joe Biden. We saw that there are meetings, and this is one of the things that came out in yesterday's testimony, that there are meetings with these oligarchs or their different agents acting on behalf of them that are being CC'd through in emails to Joe Biden, acting under Joe Biden's alias of Robert L. Peters, and then he's having his own staffers help coordinate these meetings with these different people who are paying his son these high amounts of money. So that's why I'm saying that he certainly was coordinating with them. and helping them believe. I think there's plenty of evidence that's been submitted. I don't love the format that the House uses in general for their impeachments, because there's no foundation evidence put in there and all this other stuff that we need to verify the veracity of the evidence. That's just the nature of the way that that Congress unfortunately works. It's not as strict as a courtroom. But with respect to evidence coming in there, so there are tons of emails and text messages which all validate that Joe Biden was knowingly participating in helping coordinate meetings between Hunter and these different associates and meeting with them, pictures of him with them, sitting down for dinners with the mayor, with corrupt oligarchs, and right after his son gets a check from them.
Question.
So all of these things, I'm saying, all of these to me help display. I'm landing my plane here. All of these to me help display that Joe Biden himself is helping his son sell the illusion of access. And to me, that's an attempted bribery. It's an attempt to get his son to get bribed. Whether or not Joe got the money, I don't care, because he's helping sell the idea that Washington is for sale, as long as you pay the right people.
Okay, question real quickly while you're landing. I've got a bunch of super chats I really want to get through too.
I'm done with that. I landed, so we're good.
Oh, cool. Couldn't the inquiry be seen as a grand jury and we want a ham sandwich?
I think essentially that's what it is. But again, I think there are two issues here that we have to kind of wrestle with. Number one, we're talking about impeaching someone for things that they did before they were president. So that I think opens up a huge can of worms, because we haven't resolved that, right? And impeachment generally is about things that you did when you were president. So, if we now are opening up impeachment to their whole adult life, and if we can find one crime they committed when they weren't president and impeach them for that because they are president, then I think that's, then we are expanding impeachment to places where it has never been before, because I don't think there's anyone who's ever been even brought up on impeachment, had an impeachment inquiry about things they did before they were in office. Would you at least agree with that, Joe?
I would say to you that I think he could be impeached today. At least the Democrats have said that you can impeach someone today for what they did while they were in office. So he could be impeached as vice president. According to Democrats,
Yes.
Joe Biden could be impeached from his term as vice president, and that would make him ineligible to serve as president today.
Interesting.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know.
All right, let me go through these really quickly. Donald Reagan declared himself acting president when Ronald Reagan got shot, and Reagan made VP Bush acting president when he went into surgery to have the bullet removed. That's weird about Reagan declaring himself president at the time. But
the Secretary of State also declared himself acting president. But when you actually have a live vice president, that was all nonsense. The vice president automatically became the boss.
I thought Herbert Walker became Herbert Walker Bush became the president when he was shot.
Yeah, and he wasn't actually acting president. He was actually president until, because acting president is someone who's not vice president. So if it was the Speaker of the House, for instance, became president, that would actually technically be acting president.
Who was it that came out and said, "I'm in charge now"? Was it Schultz? I think you're saying Secretary of State or whatever.
The Secretary of State was like, "I'm in charge now."
Yeah.
Maybe it's joking. Okay, Little Rock. Eric, I don't have money for Joe's, Nate's, and son-in-law's shows when I catch them live. Don't mean to dominate chat. Well, thank you, Little Rock. I deeply, deeply appreciate it here. Theoprastus 3.0. Joe is 100% correct. The entire planet knows that Biden is totally corrupt.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Nova. Nate, there are none so blind as he who will not see. He sees Trump guilty of everything and Biden of nothing.
Has he not been listening to what I've been saying? Like, I think
they're
all corrupt.
He sent it in a few minutes ago. Come on. He sent it
maybe.
A few minutes. Come on.
Maybe I haven't said it enough. Yeah, Biden's a corrupt, worthless politician. I think all this stuff is crazy. I think he's guilty of all this stuff. But I'm talking about the evidence I've seen. I haven't seen enough evidence to say that that's in fact for real. But I do believe, I believe Hunter's corrupt. I think Biden's corrupt. I think they're all, I don't know how I need to say it. Yes, Biden's corrupt. Yes,
I know, but you're gonna forever live with the fact you voted for the guy. So enjoy.
Yeah. Hey, I voted for Giuliani too. I
Little Rock
back too.
I this is kind of where I'm landing possibly with Little Rock. I don't think enough for impeachment, conviction, but enough for impeachment. And I think that there's enough why not try it? Why not put out the evidence? That's why I kept saying, isn't the impeachment the actual trial? And then the Senate determines if they're going to convict or not.
No, the impeachment is the indictment, and the Senate is the trial. The Senate judges impeachments. They don't actually impeach anybody. They judge impeachments.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So the impeachment's the trial. That's where they lay out evidence.
Yeah, the Senate trial. The impeachment is the inquiry. The trial, the Senate is the trial.
The inquiry stage is more where we're getting evidence for the House to vote to have him impeached.
That's why I said it's a grand jury.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
That's a fair.
It's essentially a grand jury.
Yeah, it's a fair analogy.
Okay. Sorry. Anyway, Darko Lushji. As I must remind Nate, per uncivil, impeachment is a political process. The standard for conviction is whatever the hell Congress says. It would be nice if beyond a reasonable doubt was the standard, but it isn't.
Yeah, that's well, maybe this person didn't when we actually made that point. Yes.
Well, exactly again, I'm catching up, Nate.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm saying I think this person probably just didn't hear us when we made that point. Yes, true.
Entry required. BS, and more BS. Nate, I love having Nate here. Thank you.
Again, all these super chats to tell me how much.
Nate is always high priority. This is prior to the CIA/U.S. State Department/Soros/Clinton Maidan coup, where the U.S. and EU took control of Ukraine. Nate, you are so wrong. Mr. Entry required.
Well, again, this person for some reason doesn't maybe understand. The Republicans asked for this prosecutor to be. Everyone was saying we get this prosecutor. This guy's corrupt, and then he resigned. So I don't know what this person's saying.
All right. I am losing faith, Eric, during this podcast. The founding fathers told us that we have the ballot box, the jury box, and the cartridge box. I am overseas, but I'm angry.
Well, the problem now is so many people have the Xbox, and they care about that more than they do.
Well played.
The fourth estate.
Hey, my cat's name is Karen. That's a good name for a cat. Happy Friday. Just wanted to let you know how much I love this live. The format is awesome. Thank you to all the creators. Love from Florida. Well, we love you, and thank you very much. There was a couple Rumble rants that came in forever ago. And these are all about the Jews.
Oh my God.
Rivka, the Jade Gamer. The ADL knows that America is sensitive to anti-Semitism, so they use the accusation as a weapon against America for the cover of others who share their political leanings, but not their heritage. Totally agree.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then continuing another rant from Rivka. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Mashiach or something like that. Joe?
Mashiach, probably.
Mashiach. Okay.
Mashiach. That's the Hebrew term for Messiah.
Okay. Came from the line of David to right the world, and those who hate Hashem will do everything that Hashem will do everything they can to oppose him. Hating the children of Israel does that, the world turns against them.
Yeah.
Okay. All you crazy background history stuff. Let me see. Jim Satala just came in. The problem is that every single politician does what Biden and Menendez did. They are all guilty, and they all have, and they have had a gentleman's agreement not to dig into the corruption and graft since the 1920s. They crossed the Rubicon to get Trump.
I totally buy this. Yeah. In fact, if you want evidence of this, one of the things that came up during the impeachment hearings yesterday is they were talking about a couple of the Democrats were raising what happened that Kevin McCarthy changed his tune between September 1st when he said, "No way is there enough here to have an inquiry."
That's a winning comment.
No way is there enough here to have an impeachment inquiry. And then no further evidence came in. And then on September 12th, he's like, "Let's go for an impeachment inquiry." And the only thing that happened was that his neck was put in a noose by the Freedom Caucus of the MAGA Republicans are the ones who basically threatened his job and to help shut down the government. So, and that all of a sudden he sort of threw that as a bone, the impeachment inquiry as a bone to the MAGA Republicans. And that's what they were saying, is why there's no proper justification for this inquiry. And I will tell you this, they're correct on their timeline, but then we have to ask, not why is it that he changed and now says there's more evidence? My question is, why did he say there was insufficient evidence to begin an inquiry on September 1? And I think that last comment from Jim Satala who's a great viewer and often gives great comments, that was spot on. I think there is a gentleman's agreement in Congress. I think that this axis of illusion is something that I'm saying is impeachable for Biden. I think that is common fare in Washington, and it has been for a very, very, very long time, probably longer than any of us have been alive. So, and I think that there's a gentleman's agreement by all of these DC people that this is the dirty secret as far as this access or illusion of access that is sold to a lot of people. You know, when they talk about the oligarchs who were not sanctioned by Biden. So, you know, the Republicans brought up how the Russian the mayor's wife who gave money to Hunter was one of the few people who were not sanctioned when the U.S. sanctioned the Russian oligarchs, and try to use that as sign. And I've heard Democrats make the point that, well, there are several other oligarchs who are also not sanctioned. And I think that should not be, that's not an excuse for Biden. We need to ask, who did those oligarchs pay to get out of being sanctioned? Because I think that this has been a long running thing, and that the only reason Kevin McCarthy didn't want to dig into it is because it is a gentleman's agreement that we're going to let the sharks do what the sharks do, and we don't care if they're red or blue. So
I honestly agree 100%. I think political bias is a hell of a drug, because just like we talk about the illusion of one side's corruption, if I told you there were judges who were getting millions of dollars in benefits and then listening to cases from those same people's companies, you know, you'd be like, oh, that judge should be impeached. But then if that judge happens to be Clarence Thomas, then it's like, okay, well, we don't even talk about things like that. And I think we all have those blinders on. But I think sometimes we just have to understand politics, and people in these positions are playing that game. And when you have the power to look at them, then guess what? They're going to look at them. When the Democrats had the power to go after Trump, they went after Trump. The Republicans got the power to go after Biden, they go after Biden. I'm just saying, just be consistent about the whole thing, and then I won't even have a problem with it. And I think that's the reason why, you know, we just like we have all these conversations, we've never talked about the Supreme Court stuff. Why? Because we all know the chat won't like that, right? And that's why I even sometimes stay away from some stuff, which I know my group doesn't like. But I think sometimes we just have to have the hard reality. They all corrupt. And if they're all corrupt, then we should be calling out the corruption as it is. That's my only critique about sometimes I think the way we do things.
Agree. And that's a great final word. Nate, where can people find you?
Nate the Lawyer. If you want to watch my videos and get angry, because I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you, well, I'm going to say some stuff you're going to love, and I'm going to see some stuff you're going to hate. But at both the times, you'll know it's coming from my opinion, and it is what it is. Either you hate me or you love me, but I'm going to self-serve you the truth.
From the cockles of his heart. Steve, what do you have coming? Where can we find you?
All right. Well, first of all, I like Nate. And then second of all, Southern Law's the channel, and I got a live stream tomorrow, catching up on things that happened in criminal cases this week. And with that, I'll also say I like Joe.
Well, thank you.
And Eric. I just don't know which way to point. Yeah, which way to point towards you. Sorry about
Well, you know what? I'll take the fact you show up all the time. So it's like you don't have to like me now. Okay, and everybody knows the tradition. Joe tells us what's going on, and then usually we'll try to say something of value or just say something. Joe.
You can find me at goodlogic.locals.com. It's goodlogic.locals.com. That's where you find me. Well, and basically, I cover where law and politics intersect is where I end up finding myself most frequently. If not, then where law and philosophy intersect is basically where you're going to find me. So, and I stream from 10 to midnight, and also whenever Little Rock wants to sponsor me, I'll stream then too. whatever time works for you, Little Rock, you let me know. I'll stream. You know. So yeah. As far as like a final thought, you know, there's an ancient Indian expression